Shalom and welcome back to Israel with Aline. Today we are in the biblical city of Ashdod, the city of the giants of the Anakim, where the Ark of the Covenant was kept, and the city that received a terrible plague and punishment from God. Let's dive deep into the history and archaeology of this place and try to understand why archaeologists don't want to excavate the site where the Ark was kept. So if you're ready, let's get started. Ashdod is one of the places that holds the most archaeological and biblical secrets in all the land of Israel. And that's why, without a doubt, we're going to have a very surprising day. And to make this journey with us, we have a very special guest, my father, Dr. Jorge.
Shalom, everyone. I'm so happy to discover this place. Aline, it's going to be wonderful.
And now, if you're ready, let's get started. And now let's go in. At Ashdod Yam Fortress, Ashdod. Currently, Ashdod is the fifth largest city in Israel. It is a modern and vibrant city, but it holds a gigantic past.
It's amazing, Aline. This city was founded 3,800 years ago by the Canaanites.
And it appears 20 times in the Bible, both with the name Ashdod and also in the New Testament. It appears as a zotus, and let's take advantage of the fact that we're here among the ruins to begin to understand the history of this place from its very beginning.
Ashdod was founded a long time ago as a port city. We're here on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea.
The first time the city appears in the Bible is actually in the book of Joshua, when the 12 tribes are now actively conquering the Promised Land. They had left slavery in Egypt, spent 40 years wandering in the desert, and now they had also crossed the Jordan River. They have to conquer the land from all the peoples who lived here. And one of those large groups who lived here were precisely the Anakim, the giants. However, Joshua, despite all his military capability, is not able to defeat all the Anakim. The Bible tells us that 3 enclaves of Anakim remained throughout the land.
At that time, Joshua went and eliminated the Anakim.
The hill regions of Hebron, Debir, Anab, and all the mountains of Judah and all the mountains of Israel. Joshua completely destroyed them along with their cities. None of the Anakim survived in the land of the children of Israel. Only in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod did any remain. Look at this. In only 3 cities of the Promised Land, Anakim remain here in Ashdod, in Gaza, which is nearby 30 kilometers to the south along the coast. And the 3rd city is Gath, which is the city that just a few decades later is where Goliath comes from. And the Bible tells us about the gigantic stature he had, but who were these giants? The Bible talks about 3 giant races. The first of them, the Rephaim, and they lived in the region of Bashan. That's what we nowadays call the Golan Heights. And archaeological excavations in that area have actually found gigantic structures, like the Gilgal Rephaim, the Circle of Giants, which we've even shown here on the channel. This gigantic structure is 160 meters in diameter. 42,000 stones were used in its construction, and it is actually from the Bronze Age. And the second giant race were the Nephilim, who are an extremely mysterious antediluvian group. We know little about them, and the information we have comes mainly from the book of Genesis. In those days there were Nephilim on earth, and also afterward when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and they bore children to them. They were the heroes of the past, men of renown. What we heard was before the flood, but we see that as well. The 12 spies report their encounter with the Nephilim. And they spread a negative report about that land among the Israelites, they said. The land we went to on a reconnaissance mission devours those who live there. All the people we saw there are of great stature. We also saw the Nephilim, the descendants of Anak, and we seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and so we seemed to them and to those who want to delve deeper into the studies of the Nephilim. There are more accounts, however, in apocryphal books, in the book of Enoch, in the book of Jubilees, and in the book of Giants. Found among the scrolls.
And the
third race, the third group, were the Anakim, whose origins are also very mysterious. We know that they are descendants of Enake, but there are also theories that say maybe they were descendants of the Nephilim, but that somehow they managed to survive the flood. But we really have no way of knowing that. What we do know is that they had a very strong military power here in Ashdod, and they managed to repel Joshua's attacks. Because this whole area, according to the Bible, was destined for the tribe of Judah, but the tribe of Judah was never able to expel the Canaanites from here, and that's why the border was several kilometers away. How many kilometers in that direction?
You're probably wondering about this vial I'm wearing around my neck. It contains soil from inside the Temple Mount, carrying biblical history with me. In 1999, this soil was illegally dumped to erase our past, but archaeologists rescued it through the Temple Mount Sifting Project. Own a piece of history and support their work. Scan the QR code or use the link below for a memorable holiday gift.
But what archaeological evidence do we have of the Anakim outside the Bible? Actually, one of the most important findings didn't come from here in Ashdod, but from Egypt. It was actually a 3,000-year-old execration text. What does that mean? A piece of pottery was found, and on it was a list of the Pharaoh's enemy peoples here in Canaan. And among them is Anak, which means the people of Anak, the Anakim. And it even mentions the names of their kings, the kings of Anak, Arum, Abiamimu, and Akirum. The execration texts were part of a ritual to neutralize enemies. How was this done? The names of enemy kings and peoples were written on ceramics or figurines. And then the pharaoh or his priest would break these objects while reciting curses. And they wished that just as that pot or figurine was being destroyed, their enemies would suffer the same fate. And just imagine then how powerful the Anakim must have been. The people of Anak to be considered a worthy enemy of great ancient Egypt. I mean, the Pharaoh, the great Pharaoh of Egypt 3,000 years ago, considered this place and the Anakim as high-level enemies. Dad, I'm sure everyone wants to know about everything we see around us, what's from that time, what's from the Anakim here.
Well, the Anakim are from the Bronze Age, but everything here is from a later period. It's not exactly from the Anakim.
We are now inside the fortress of Ashdod Yam, and this area was first built during the Assyrian period about 2,700 years ago. and then it was also destroyed and rebuilt. Many times,
including in one of the reconstructions, there were these columns from the Byzantine period right there.
so this area where we are is from a later period. But today, everyone, we will walk together through the area from the Bronze Age, so don't worry, we will get to the truly original part of Ashdod Yam. But before we continue our walk, I want to follow our timeline. Because we were talking about Joshua. Joshua tried to conquer Ashdod from the Anakim, but he wasn't the one who actually managed to conquer this city. Not long after,
it was the Philistines.
Exactly. And this city becomes part of the Pentapolis, the 5 great Philistine cities, which included Ashdod,
Ekron, Gath, Ashkelon, and Gaza.
And it's no surprise that these 5 cities were located on the coast or very close to it, because the Philistines were part of the Sea Peoples, an invading people who originated from the Aegean Sea, from the island of Kaftor, which we believe to be the island of Crete. And they crossed the Aegean Sea, crossed the Mediterranean Sea, and arrive here on the coast of Canaan and take over this southern part of the coast. For them, after 450 years of Philistine rule, the city is conquered by the Assyrian Empire, then by the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Hasmonean Kingdom, which was a Jewish kingdom, the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, different Islamic caliphates, the Crusaders, the Mamluk Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. It was part of the British Mandate until it finally became part of the State of Israel in 1948. The city really changed hands many times, and each people left their mark. We now leave the fortress to begin our great journey. A long 2-kilometer walk to explore the oldest part of Ashdod, the part that is truly over 3,000 years old and holds its secrets. We leave the fortress behind, but I want you to notice something very impressive, this whole area around us, which is completely open. The government forbids any kind of construction here. There are some marked hiking trails, a few places to sit, but construction is completely prohibited here. This draws even more attention if we look at what's around here. Look, around us is the modern city of Ashdod, the 5th largest city in Israel, with tall skyscrapers. Without a doubt, this area would be extremely valuable for construction. First, we are in Ashdod, in this big city. We are next to one of the largest deep-water ports in Israel, an extremely important place for imports and exports. And of course, we are next to the Mediterranean Sea. Imagine how much a house or an apartment by the sea with a view of the Mediterranean Sea would be worth here. But there is a very special reason why the government does not allow construction here in this area, and that reason is also connected to the history, to the past of Ashdod. Let's go. We are now in a red-marked area. As you can see, this is called the Antiquities Trail. Why? Where is biblical Ashdod? Ashdod from the Iron and Bronze Ages? Exactly beneath our feet. And everyone here, the government knows that the city is here, buried under these sand hills, under this vegetation. However, this place hasn't been excavated. As we can see, almost all of it is still in this natural state. And look at what was found in Fortaleza with the excavations. How many things were discovered? And here, everywhere we walk, we can also see archaeology. Look here. Wow, there was a little tip sticking out. Here, when we pick it up, we find a much bigger piece, guys. This is a piece of pottery. And there's a good chance this is from the Bronze Age or the Iron Age. And where do we walk here in this area? We see the archaeology of the city, of the Canaanites, the Anakim who lived here, and also the Philistines. And that's why we're going to keep walking to show you the real biblical Ashdod. But we need to leave this here. All the archaeology belongs to Israel. I noticed something here on the side of the path, and I need to show you because it's the perfect example of the archaeology of this place. We can see several pieces of pottery here, and you can see how they're really embedded in the ground. You can clearly see that this is ancient pottery. Look here, guys, look here. Did you see all of this here, guys? These are ancient pottery pieces, and we understand. So if we dig in this area here, we'll really find a lot more. This is just literally what's coming up from the depths of Ashdod. In the Iron Age, the Philistines became the great enemies of the people of Israel, and there were many battles between the two peoples. However, one decisive battle was the Battle of Ebenezer. And who won the Battle of Ebenezer? The Philistines. The people of Israel went back home in shock, wondering what had happened. But instead of turning to the God of Israel, of crying out to God for help, they decided to do something in an easier way, in quotes, and also something unprecedented. They go to Shiloh, to the tabernacle, enter the Holy of Holies, and take the Ark of the Covenant. Inside it were the tablets of the law, the manna, and Aaron's staff. And they take the Ark of the Covenant and bring it to the battlefield. Maybe a way to take the Ark as an amulet to help in the war. They don't understand that the Ark wouldn't be what makes the difference. Yes, their faith in God, God's presence would make the difference, not the Ark. And again, there's a great battle, the second battle of Ebenezer, this time with the Ark. And who wins it? Once again, the Philistines. But it's an even more devastating victory for Israel. Over 30,000 Israelite soldiers die in battle, including the two sons of Eli, the high priest who guarded the sanctuary in Shiloh. And worst of all, the Ark of the Covenant was stolen by the Philistines, and they took it to Ashdod. Yes, to Ashdod. We are now in Ashdod. Right at that time, and more specifically, they take the Ark into the temple of Dagon. The Philistines took the Ark of God and placed it in the temple of Dagon next to the image of Dagon. When the inhabitants of Ashdod got up early the next morning, behold, Dagon had fallen face down on the ground. In front of the Ark of the Lord, they took the image of Dagon and put it back in its place, getting up early in the morning. The next morning, behold, Dagon was lying face down before the Ark of the Lord. Dagon's head and his hands were cut off, only his torso was left intact. Thanks to this detailed biblical account, we know that the Ark was inside the temple of Dagon here in Ashdod. And where is this temple? Without a doubt, in this area where we are, where we walk, here we see archaeological evidence. Look at this here. We can see a perfectly square stone. This is definitely not a product of nature. This stone was cut and shaped by human hands and indicates the presence of large constructions in this area. So somewhere around us, there was the temple of Dagon and the Ark of the Covenant. However, only the archaeologists excavating here will be able to reveal the exact location to us. A small part of this area, yes, has been excavated, which is exactly this area where I am now, and with just a little bit excavated. Look at what has already started to emerge here, what has started to be discovered. And the question we have to ask is, if we excavate, is there any chance of finding the ark? And the answer is no, because the ark was indeed brought to Ashdod. However, the city suffered a terrible punishment from God. The city suffered a plague of trorum. Trorum in Hebrew means hemorrhoids. Yes, a plague of hemorrhoids struck this city. Unfortunately, when we look at Bibles translated into other languages nowadays, sometimes we see this translated as sores, ulcers, cancers, or tumors. There are several different translations for this word, but the original and correct meaning is a plague of hemorrhoids. Whether it's pleasant or not, that's the truth. And the city was truly terrified. They understood that the plague came because of the ark, so they removed the ark from the city and sent it to another city, Philistia. And it went from one Philistine city to another, and wherever it arrived, this plague followed the people. And in the end, the Philistines decide to return the ark to its owners, the people of Israel, and they send it to Beit Shemesh. From there, it goes to Kiriath Jearim and finally goes up to Jerusalem, where it was later placed in the temple. So, we are now at one of the stations of the Ark of the Covenant, and we really need to continue our journey, because I can already see that in the background a big storm is approaching.
Well, guys, it started to rain, and unlike what we feel with rain in Brazil, here rain is a blessing from God in this desert area. For many months during the year, we're happy we get wet, but we don't complain.
Without a doubt, rain here in the Holy Land is a blessing, whether it rains or shines. We're here to show you all the archaeology of Israel from north to south and what we're going to talk about now. It's a story that happened here with Philip. Do you remember that Philip was an evangelist?
Right?
Exactly, Philip the evangelist. He travels to different places here on earth to evangelize.
You can put on the hood there.
You can put on the hood. He travels to different places in Israel to evangelize. He baptizes the eunuch, and after that it is written that he goes to Azotus again. It's another name for Ashdod, and he comes here to evangelize in this city. I mean, this is one of the first places in all the Holy Land outside of Galilee, outside of Jerusalem, that receives the gospel. And we mentioned that little of this place has been excavated, but some things from the Roman period, from the time of Philip, have been excavated. And we actually have them here. Father, can you identify what structure this is?
It's definitely a tomb.
Everyone can come here, climb up with us to show. We're seeing tombs and funerary structures here. You can see the original entrance here, but it's sealed, closed, because the idea was that the person would enter and never need to leave again. And here we see a double funerary structure. We see these structures that are exactly from the Roman and Byzantine periods. And that's why I want to close the story of Ashdod at this place, because I see that there's a historical and biblical twist. The city starts as a city that faces the people of Israel. Joshua is not able to conquer the city, and the Anakim continue living here. Then it becomes a city of the Philistines, the great enemies of the people of Israel. Nation after nation comes and conquers this place, leaving their mark. The Ark of the Covenant was here, and as a consequence, the plague of hemorrhoids happened here. But the city ends its story in the biblical period as a city of evangelization and a city that converts. Ashdod becomes a Christian city during the Byzantine period. In fact, one of the last archaeological excavations was done outside this area. Here, a little further inside the city, a Byzantine church was found, which means that during the first Christian period in Israel, there was already a church here. So we can really see how this city, which started out opposing the God of Israel and receiving plagues from the God of Israel, ended up converting and becoming a Christian place.
But the question I have is, why am I the only one getting wet and you aren't?
So, everyone, due to circumstances beyond our control, the rain, we're going to stop our recording for today. But I hope you enjoyed learning a little more about the biblical city of Ashdod.
Shalom to everyone, folks. Shalom.
And I'll see you next time.